It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Leif, Edward, Leibela, Elika, and your Hebrew name was Eliyahu Weissmann. And Eddie, you were born in Stockholm in 1943.
Exactly, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit how your family managed to escape from Austria and from Tsarist Russia and land up in Stockholm, in Switzerland, in Sweden?
Okay. First of all, let's start with the older generation. My grandfather, his name was Raphael Glassman. And Raphael Glassman, he was born in Kiev, in today's Ukraine, even that time Ukraine, in the Jewish area of Kiev, because Jews were not allowed to live in the city. And as the pogrom started there in Ukraine, he had enough and he wanted to save his life, and he went to Sweden. And strange enough, afterwards they called him to the Russian army. They wanted to draft him to the Russian army, and he was already in Sweden, and his parents, and they begged him to come to join the Russian army, otherwise they would make sanctions on the family and give them a fine of 200 rubles. And 200 rubles at that time was a lot of money. So my grandfather complied with him, and they called him to come to St. Petersburg. So he came there, he was drafted in St. Petersburg. They promised him that they would release him from the duty and pay the fine. But they never did so. They didn't keep their words. His parents and his siblings, I don't remember how many siblings he had. Anyway, he was quite annoyed with them and disappointed, to say the least. He was in the Russian army for nearly 3 years, and lucky enough he didn't have to go to fighting unit, because he had learned he was a skilled shoemaker. So he made army boots for the officers, with nice leather boots for them. So that's the way he spent his time in the army. And he also told me when he was drafted, there was one of those high priests, or what do you call them, in the Orthodox Church, the big priest there, what's the name again? Forgot the name they have, especially. It's not like a pope, but it's something similar. And he held a very anti-Semitic speech in front of all the soldiers in St. Petersburg, and there was a lot of Jewish draftees there. And anyway, he managed to get out there unscratched from the army, and via Finland he came back to Sweden. My grandmother was a different story. She was born in Krasnapolye, which is Belarus. It's an area called Mogilov. And she and her father was a Talmid Chacham, and she told me about the life there, how they lived there, and how they baked matzots, and 90% of the population in Krasnapolye, they were Jewish. So even the Goyim spoke Yiddish. And anyway, so she and her siblings, they were afraid what happening in Ukraine. They said to them, never, nothing actually serious happened in Belarus, but they were afraid that it would spill over, the pogroms would spill over also to Belarus. So she also managed to come to Stockholm, and her brother, I don't remember his name, he also came to Stockholm, and afterwards he continued to and went to Norway, Oslo, where during the war they were betrayed by their Norwegian compatriots, and they were sent to Auschwitz, the whole family. My grandmother's brothers and his whole family were 11 persons or so that they sent to Auschwitz, and one survived. His name was Herman Sachnovich. My grandmother's maiden name was Sachnovich. And anyway, so as they met in my grandmother, Rivka was her name, my grandfather Raphael, they met in Stockholm. They got married there, and their firstborn was my mother, Rosa.
So we have a picture of your grandparents.
Yes.
And what happened to your grandfather on your father's side, to the family that stayed behind?
Okay. So anyway, so they first of all, they had 4 children. My mother had 3 siblings, and on my father's side, my grandfather's name was David, and his family name was Weissmann. But he was very secretive about what his background was. He says, my grandfather asked him where he was born, and he didn't even give him a proper name. Yeah, ich bin ein Galicianer, that's what he said. He was from Galicia. Where in Galicia, he didn't say. Which town? See, it was a kind of a joke name there in Galicia, and they called Boiberik. Ich bin ein Galician from Boiberik. That's what he said. It was not a real name and a real city that he was from. Anyway, he what we understood afterwards, that he came from a very Hasidic, very extreme Hasidic family, Vishnitz or something like that, and he totally left anything that had to do with the Jewish tradition or anything, skipped everything and started they eat pork in the house there. My father told me nothing. They kept kind of holidays, Pesach and so traditional. And they got married. My grandfather, on my father's side, got married with my grandmother. Her name was Rosa, and she was from Slovakia. When my father, during the time of my father, my father, when he was youngster, they got divorced, but they were too poor to separate, so they lived in I think it was a 1-room or little 2-room apartment. Don't remember exactly, very small apartment, with his grandmother. My grandmother's mother was there too, and that's the way they lived. And when Hitler, the Nazis marched into Vienna in 1938, they really abused the Jews there. They made joke about them. They let them brush their the pavement with toothbrushes. And so my father, he understood that this was the end of the Jews in Russia, in Austria. So he was in the Zionist movement Beitar, and he went there to the rich Jews in Vienna and asked for money to go to Palestine. And they said to him, "You are crazy, you are nuts. You stay here, it will blow over all this with the Hitler stuff. So don't go anywhere, the Arabs will kill you there in Palestine. So we will not give you a cent." They said to him, "Nothing." They came pending it. They said to him, okay, so he tried to go with the Jewish youth movement and to the and tried to get no one. They said to him, there is a train going there, Jugendtransport, youth transport, all kids who were below 13 years old. There was a train going to Stockholm. This was in 1939 already, 4 months before the war, and he was 17 years old. Anyway, he talked himself into that he would be their guide, the tourist guide for them on the train. So they packed him in there on the train even though he was 17 years old. And that's the way he came to Stockholm and met my mother. So that's the story. And what happened to my grandparents in Austria was as such. My grandfather, they took him to Dachau for 3 months and tortured them. They gave them the food. They beat them and treated them horribly. At that time, they wanted the Jews to leave. So after 3 months, they released him, and when he came back, he was forbidden to tell anything what happened in the concentration camp. But anyway, he took his things and he left for France. Later in France, when the Germans invaded France, he fled to Vichy. But also in Vichy, he was arrested, put in a concentration camp in southern France called Noué. There, they starved him to death in that concentration camp. They just didn't give him any food, that's all. And so he died there from a heart attack. And then with my grandmother and her mother, they were sent to also first to Dachau and then to Auschwitz, where they were murdered. That was the end of the family of my father. And afterwards, during the war, I grew up in Stockholm in a fairly nice neighborhood, and I didn't experience too much anti-Semitism at that time until I was about 7 years old. My father, he wanted to save money. His economy was very bad, so we moved to a very bad area in the outskirts of Stockholm, a suburb of Stockholm, where there was a working class anti-Semites, very bad. You know, from the day one, they told me I was they throw snowballs on me with the stones inside the snowballs. That's the welcome I got there in the area where I lived there in Stockholm.
Ed, we're just going to show a picture of your parents when they, this is your mother and your father, And your parents' names?
My father's name was Walter, and my mother's name was Rosa.
And this is on their wedding. Beautiful picture. And they were married in Stockholm.
Yes. And my on my father's side, my grandmother's, her maiden name was Steiner, and she was born in Nitra in Slovakia.
That's where they had the yeshiva in Nitra.
Yes.
And these are pictures of you.
Yeah. When I
Such
was
wonderful pictures. Was this before you moved to the anti-Semitic area in Stockholm?
Yes.
And how old were you when your parents moved?
To that anti-Semitic area, I was 7 years old.
7 years. And do you know the name of the suburb?
Yeah, Gubbängen. Gubbängen is the name of the suburb.
Were there any other Yidden living there?
Yes, there was one family in the same street where we were, Leibovich, and there was another one in a parallel street also. What's in the family's name again? Wait. Segal, the Segal family. And there was another family also who became quite famous in the Jewish community, Nisel also. They didn't live exactly in the same area, in the suburb where we lived, but they also lived there. So,
and was there a Jewish school, or was there...
Nothing. There was no Jewish school in Stockholm when I was there until 3 years later. So my 3 or 5 years later. So when I was there in school, that was my father in his workshop.
So your father was a tailor?
Yeah.
And what area did you live before you went to, when you were growing up, before you were 7 years old?
That was called Gärdet. It was a very nice area in what is it? Northern part of Stockholm. Very nice area. It was close to everything, was not so far away. With the tram you can get to the synagogue there in Stockholm, and it was quite central. It was a little bit on the outskirts of Stockholm, but quite close to the Jewish life, let's put it that way. Okay? And the population there, they were quite friendly. Yes, I have to say they were friendly. I didn't feel anything there except, there were some kids I couldn't get along, but that's natural, but not because I was Jewish anyway. But anyway, as I didn't have any Jewish school to attend, so I went to the local school there in Gubbängen, Gubbängens Folkskola, it's called. And there was a lot of anti-Semitism. I had to actually fight every day in school there. You bloody Jew, why go drop dead, why don't you go home to Palestine? That's what they said in the street there where I lived also.
And how old were you around at this time?
At that time I was about 10 years old, 11 years old.
Were you wearing a kippah?
No.
So how did they know you were Jewish?
Well, I had black hair, brown eyes. I didn't look like the ordinary Swede, blonde and blue eyes. So I looked very different from them. So they understood I was a foreigner. What kind of foreigner? Jewish foreigner, okay?
Even though you were born in...
Yeah, I was born in Sweden. My mother tongue is Swedish. It didn't matter. I was a bloody Jew anyway, you know. So so when I grew up a little bit later, when I was already about 15, you know, they said to go, maybe why are you in our country? Why don't you go to your country, Palestine? At that time, when I was 15 years old, I thought it's not such a bad idea, actually. So when around 15 years old, I was a convinced Zionist already. So I came to Israel first time when I was 17 years old. I went to kibbutz. I'm not from my family was not traditional. They kept Jewish holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, that's it. Nothing else, okay?
But do you remember going to synagogue in Stockholm?
Yeah, sure. We went there for the holidays.
Do you remember who the rabbis were, or?
I remember the Chazanim was Leo Rosenblit and Bornstein, but the rabbi, I don't remember the name of the rabbi when I was a kid. I don't. If he was, I think, not when I was. He was not alive when I was a kid. I think when I grew up, anyway, was a very bad rabbi there during the war. Anyway, who didn't want. My father tried to save my grandmother from the Nazis, and he went to the Swedish Social Democratic Party and wanted them to put a word in by the Minister of Interior to let her to come to Sweden. And she was a modist. She was a hat maker, so she could very well, you know, have provided for herself. They want to guarantee that she somehow should provide for, but she has a fantastic profession. No, they didn't want to. So he went also to the Swedish community, and they also refused to. And that rabbi, what is his name? Is a Yeke rabbi. He did not want to take in any more Jews to Sweden because it would cause too much, even more anti-Semitism. That was his name. What he said. It slipped my mind. His name.
And what happened to your aunt? She couldn't come in.
No, my grandmother. No, the Nazis took her and her mother and to Auschwitz. And they killed them.
This was your grandmother?
Yes, that was my grandmother.
And her sisters, your aunts and your uncles?
No, they were aunts and they were born in Sweden. I mean, with my mother. No, they lived in Sweden, and nothing happened to them. But because Sweden was not in the war, was neutral, so to speak.
It's terrible that the rabbi didn't go out of his way to help.
No, he did nearly the opposite.
Wow, that's so sad. That's a tragedy.
Yeah.
And Eli, can I just ask you? I know you were very young, but do you have any recollections of after the war, after 45, when refugees came to Sweden?
Yes, I do. When my father had he was a tailor, and he had a workshop, the parallel street where we lived, and there was a stream of refugees coming there after 1945. So 1945, I was only 2 years old, but I remember 1946 and 47, when I was about 4 years old, I used to run to my father there, and he used to when they start to tell the stories, they were Holocaust survivors. They came out from the mouth of the devil, from the death camps, and they start telling the stories, and they told it in German or in Yiddish, and I understood. My grandfather's parents, they spoke Yiddish, and my father spoke mostly German with my mother.
You could understand Yiddish?
Yes, both Yiddish and German. In the beginning, I couldn't know how to differentiate between the two languages, and so my father used to kick me out when they started telling the stories. He didn't want me to hear those stories because he knew I understood what they said. So and I saw people, they had cut off fingers. I don't know. They made experience with them, and they were mentally scarred and sometimes also physically scarred from the concentration camp. Yeah, there was my father's. It was like a refugee station there. People coming in and out, and sitting there talking, drinking tea, telling stories, and all day, people came in there. So there was most of the refugees, they left Sweden. They didn't stay in Sweden. They most of them went to Israel, and some went also to United States.
And your father, being a tailor, we're just going to show this lovely picture of your father. Did he have a lot of Swedish clients?
Oh yes. Nearly all of his clients were
But non-Jews?
Yeah.
And he was a successful tailor?
So he could hardly make. He could not very easy make a living. So he started to make all kind of. He went to auctions to buy stuff and sell stuff. And tries in any kind of way, to enlarge his incomes, because the income was very meager from tailoring. Anyway, in the end, he continued to deal with furs.
A furrier.
He became a furrier. Not really a furrier, but he made raw material for the furriers. He made whole bodies of fur, and he sold it to other furriers to make real fur coats and things of it. He didn't make finished products. He was prefabs he was making from fur, and from that he made a much better living. So that's the way he continued. And but tailor was not very profitable there in Sweden at that time, because there was a lot of tailors besides him there also. A lot of competition, very low pay, and so it was not so easy. That's why he wanted to save money and go to that cheap and bad area where we moved later. Also a very bad choice from my father. Later in my life I had difficulty to forgive him for that on one hand. On the other hand, I really had learned in a very early age. I learned about anti-Semitism and what it really meant, and what it meant to be a Jew. I didn't grow up religiously. There was pork in my house, in my parents' house. There was nothing kosher there, nothing. On the Pesach, made kiddush on not kosher wine. Absolutely, matzot there was not the crumb of bread crumb in our house, but nothing was kosher, nothing. Much later, I started to I went to a cheder. They call it a cheder later, because there was no Jewish school. So they sent me to classes there once a week. I went there for a cheder. My brother, though, he is 7 years younger than me, and by that time, 5 years later, that means when I was about 13 years old, my bar mitzvah time, that time they started the Jewish school that exists until today. It's called the Hillel School.
And can I ask, what do you remember about your bar mitzvah?
Bar mitzvah. That was in the big liberal synagogue in Stockholm. They have two Orthodox synagogues, and one big, the big. I call it the big Jewish church. I call it. They had organ there. They played organ there. They had the choir with women also mixed. They had actually mixed women and men, and always on Shabbat with loudspeakers and everything. A whole set of loudspeakers for the whole synagogue on Shabbat and holidays. Yeah, and the cantors, they had funny hats, like the German style of cloaks that they dressed in. It looked a little bit like priests or something. Therefore, I was called it the Jewish church manger. Yeah, well, it was. And I didn't feel that. I went there in the synagogue. I didn't get. I looked for something that would touch me. The only thing that touched me was when I went with my grandfather to sit beside him. It gave me a good feeling there when he went there for the Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It was a nice feeling to be with him, but I didn't get the hint of the whole thing until later, when I started to understand about things. But then I didn't go already to that liberal synagogue. I had enough of it, so I went to the religious place, to the Orthodox synagogue. My mother said to me, "What's the matter with you, Leif?" You said, "Neighbor, what's the matter with you, Leif? You're getting fanatic? You're going to those fanatics?" She said, and I said to my mother, "What fanatic? They're very nice people, and after Shabbat they make a kiddush, you have cakes, they give a shot of whiskey. Very nice there." I said, what is to well by fanatic is lovely. I said, "Oh, really?" She said, "Oh yeah." And then I started to eat kosher, and then after I get married, I had the kosher home and so on. And that's the way it slowly. I'm not like, Jose Bechova from today to tomorrow. Oh, Chatati Pashati.
Eddie, I'm going to just show a picture with you and your brother. And your brother's name?
David.
And he was younger than you. He's younger than you, your brother.
Yes, 7 years younger.
And he has a picture of you skating.
Yeah.
So can I ask, when these children would call you Bloody Jew and these terrible names and anti-Semitic incidents, did you know what was going on? Did you know what it meant to be Jewish? Or did you speak to your parents about why they're calling, why don't they like me? Why?
No, they didn't have a good answer. They said they hate you because you're Jewish, because we are not like them. We don't celebrate Christmas. we don't believe in Jesus, so what they believe in, so they believe in different things, and that's the way they hate you, because we are different. That's what they said to me. And they fight. I was fighting with them also, physically fighting, you know.
Did you have any non-Jewish friends?
Yes, I had one. He was a refugee himself from Finland. When the Russian-Finnish war started, so his parents sent him to Sweden. Afterwards, they joined him. So he was a refugee child himself. His name was Max. He was a very dear friend of mine. He went in school in that suburb. When the whole class wanted to beat me up, the only one who stood on my side was him. So we were fighting off the whole class. And we were the two strongest in the class. But if he was sick or something, I was alone. That was hell. They really beat me up really bad. So he was a real good friend of mine. Yeah, the whole life we were good friends.
He wasn't Jewish.
No.
Do you remember his family name, his surname?
Hedland.
And you remained friends for?
Yeah. Until he died about 3-4 years ago. Yes.
And what about your teachers? Did your teachers ever show any anti-Semitic?
Yes, of course. Yeah, they were anti-Semitic also.
The teachers?
Yeah, when the teacher, the woman, when they beat me up, they beat me up, and they came to the class, and there was, after a break, stop now, it's time to go into the class. She didn't rebuke my classmate for jumping on me, all of them. No. The opposite one, I hit the fellow, and I broke his nose, and he was bleeding badly. So I got smacked in my face because that I hit him. She smacked my face, not showed any sympathy for me, no, for him. I was the victim, and the perpetrator got the sympathy.
And Eli, do you remember any of the survivor children? Children who also came from the camps? Did you meet any, or did you have any when you were growing up?
Yeah, was one. His name. There was friends of my grandparents. His name was Tobias Ravet. He's still alive. He still lives in the Jewish pension home in Stockholm. Tobias Ravet. Yes, I remember him very well. And he was a refugee child. He really suffered very bad during the war, and survived. And he had how many kids are there? Lotta, and I think there are two. They got 2 kids. He was married to a Swedish Jewish girl. That time her name was Jokton, was her family name. I don't remember her first name right now. Yes, that's the one I remember, who came to Sweden as a child from the concentration camp. But that was, and he went around in the Swedish schools, and he and telling about what he had suffered during the war. He had gave lectures in the Swedish schools about his experience as a child, what he suffered under the Nazis.
And how was he accepted?
Where, in the schools?
In the schools.
This is the later years. No, he was very, very well received by the. They asked him to come to give lectures. So he was very well received, and it was a very moving story he was telling. Very moving story. I heard it was recorded on YouTube, I think it was.
And Eli, when you decided to come to Israel, did you have any relatives in Israel, or?
No relative whatsoever. I came here all by wanted to go to Israel. I didn't know if I would stay here, but at least I wanted to have the experience. I wanted to come and live in Israel, but to come here when you're 17 years old and you have no family support or nothing, that's very difficult.
Were your parents supportive of you coming?
My father, yes. My mother, no. And but I came here. I was in the kibbutz Mayan Tzvi. It was a totally unreligious kibbutz from the it was, I think, Mapainik they were, not the Mapam, not the extra, communist kibbutz. But there, I learned a little bit about kashrut there. What I mean, in the opposite way. They had, I think there were half dead chickens with circulation problems, and the meat of the chicken was blue, and that's what they served in the Chadar Ochel there. So I said, no, I don't want that blue meat. I said, you give me the white meat, not the blue one. I said, and I then later understood they were half dead. That when they shocked them, they were already out. They were full. They fell on their knife, and they didn't have to cut it and whoop like that. And then on Pesach, I was in for a shock. Not that it was kosher in my house at home, but anyway, this was Eretz Israel. This was the land of the Jews. And on Pesach, when I came in, I asked, is there going to be a Seder here? Because I was not so sure they would make a Seder at all. The way, they behaved and were thinking, they didn't think Jewish at all. And they say, yeah, of course, we're going to have a Seder. Don't worry. And you have an ordinary Haggadah that I can follow? Yeah, of course, they said. Okay, when we came in there for the Leila Seder, there was a big basket of chalot and one with matzot. It's democratic, you can choose whatever you want. You want chalot, and that was for the Seder. Okay, so then I understood, this doesn't look too promising. When I came in there, no, where's the Haggadah? And they had the Haggadah. I never seen Haggadah like that in my life. It was totally different. It was a kibbutz Haggadah. It was not so much about God or anything like that. It was kind of like a little storybook or something like that. That was the Haggadah. So I was quite shocked. I never experienced something like that. So that was my experience then in the kibbutz anyway. And later on, I went to work a bit from after. I was there for half a year. I stayed about another 5 months in Israel, and I was working in Dimona as a building site work. In Herzliya I worked also. For Solel Bonnet, the big company, I worked there. And before I went back to Sweden, because it was too hard for me to be by myself. And then I was already 18 years old. Okay, I was here 11 months or so, nearly a year. 11 months or so I was here.
And in Sweden, did you study?
Study Torah?
No, did you study profession?
No, nothing. I was like I was fighting in school all the time, with going physically fighting with them, and also verbally. So I never got the, I never studied anything. I had to manage myself to learn. So became a salesman. I started to sell stationery and gift items, you know, with pens, with print on, etc., etc. And I made quite a good living out of it. And then I started with self-adhesive tape, masking tape, packaging material. So I had to, what I didn't learn in school, I have to learn myself. So I built up my own business there in Sweden, and I lived very well from it, actually. But I don't have any formal education, let's put it like, just the very basic, and that's all.
And you got married in Sweden?
Yes, again, not with the Jewish woman. She's later converted, and but she was not Jewish to start with. Very sympathetic to the Jews. That's why I met her by Jews. In Jewish party, I met her. That's why I got married to her. Later we got divorced. That's a different story, but anyway.
And then when did you decide to come to live in Israel, to make Aliyah?
Oh, after I left Israel, when I was 18 years old, I wanted to come back and settle in Israel. My wife at that time, she was not so keen to come to Israel. So, and our relation was taping out anyway, so that time she wanted to have a divorce from me. And I agreed immediately, and I continued with my business there in Sweden. I saw my kids there, where I had 2 children, Daniel and Nomi, and anyway, so I worked for some, since the divorce, another 9 years more. I sold everything I had, and in the meantime, after when we got divorced, I asked her to sign a paper for a mashkanta for a flat in Ramot, while we still were married. So I got the mashkanta for a flat there in Ramot, in Sulam Yaakov, a 3-room flat, 3rd floor, and so I had a flat already in Israel, in Jerusalem. So this was 1976, and 10 years later, I took all my things. That was final. Before in '79, I was already here and brought a lot of stuff as an immigrant, but I didn't finalize the immigrant. I was a temporary resident at that time. So in 1986, I brought everything, and I sold everything I had in Sweden. I came to Israel for good. That was the end of it.
And you've stayed here ever since?
Yes.
And you were living in Ramot?
Yes, until 2003. I lived in Ramot. I was looking for it in the area of Jerusalem. I said to myself, I don't want to live in an apartment building anymore. I want to have my own house on the ground with a little garden by myself. No walls attached to anyone. So I looked around, and I was in Mishor Adomim, Malé Adomim, looking for plots of lands. Kfar Adomim, I looked, and it's Peyercho. And here more in the south, I looked in Tekoa, Nokdim, and Nokdim said to me, oh, there you have a Kfar Eldad there. I was divorced at that time with one child, and says, no, they want a nuclear family, not someone divorced. That's not for us. No, you're not suitable for us. So in the end, I came here. They accepted me here in Kvarelbad, and that's where we are today.
And it's such a lovely place. You're in such a lovely area.
Yeah, I was the first one to build a house, mind you. They could have torn down my house. I didn't have a building permit. Everybody said, Eli Weissmann, you are totally crazy. You're moving to the end of the world to the left, and you risk all your money. What shall I? I said, I believe in God I trust. I think God will protect me. I'm in my own land. I don't believe that God will kick me out and destroy my house. No, I don't believe that. I think He meant me to be here.
And look, now on this street there's so many beautiful houses that have been built.
Yeah.
But you were the first.
Yes. 100, I think 105 houses now. 110 or something, yeah.
And Eddie, I have to ask you, when you look back on your life and you look back in Sweden, does it surprise you what's happening today? We went through the Shoah, and now look at Never Again is happening again, and there's so much anti-Semitism all over the world again.
And now I remember the Adam Price was that name of the rabbi there in Stockholm during the Second World War. Adam Price.
But it's a pity that he, because of his actions,
my grandmother
died.
Yes.
It's so sad.
Hmm?
But it's also so sad that in Sweden today there's so much anti-Semitism again.
Yes, and I was convinced already in the 1980s. I was politically very much engaged with a group of Jews trying to influence the Swedish, especially the Swedish Social Democratic Party, for a more favorable policy towards Israel, and of course towards the Jews. They did the opposite. They forbade shchita in Sweden.
Yeah.
There was no kosher you have to buy from abroad. I said to all my friends, there is no future for the Jews in Sweden and not in Europe altogether. This is them. They're going back to their old ways, with the old way, the old anti-Semitism is going to come back, and is going to come back with the Muslims, with the Arabs, I said.
When was this? When did you realize this was happening?
I realized that after 1973.
Wow, it's a long time ago.
In 1973, already after 1967 war, when Israel beat all the Arab armies, they were very pro-Israeli before then, but then it started to turn around 1967. By 1973, when Egypt and Syria attacked Israel, there was no sympathy at all for Israel at that time, although that Israel was attacked by them. No sympathies. And they took in, afterwards they took in started taking Arabs, big quantities of Arabs to Sweden, refugees, so to speak, refugees from their own cruelty, because most of them came from Arab countries.
And Eddie, have you ever been to Malmo?
Yes, several times.
They say today Malmo is very unsafe for Jews. It's a very...
Yeah. It's because there is more than I think about in Malmö. I think about 15% of the population there are Muslims there in Malmö today. Right? So more than 15%, maybe close to 20% are Muslims there. So they did it on purpose. You know the music festival, the Eurovision festival. They had to have a special guards for the Israeli group who came there.
So it never came as a surprise to you when Sweden and the Scandinavian countries became so anti-Israel and very anti-Semitic?
No.
Never came as a surprise.
I foresaw that already at that time. I said to all my Jewish friends already in 1980, I said to everybody, pack your things, go to Israel. There is no future if you want to continue to live as Jews, there is no future for the Jews in Sweden or in any other European country either, for that matter. Even in communities like in Britain and France, where they have so many Jews, it's very, very unsafe.
It's become very difficult. Very.
Yes. So there's no future for the Jews in Europe. I saw that already in a few years after when they made the peace treaty already with Egypt, 1979. I already saw which way it was going.
And Eddie, if I can ask, what message do you what message can you impart to the future generations?
Of Europe?
Just a message in general. Having been born in Sweden, having witnessed anti-Semitism and now the reoccurrence of anti-Semitism, and how your family actually they fled to Sweden, and they gave him sanctuary, but things never change.
No, it's in their genes. It's in their genes, in the European genes. Anti-Semitism is embedded in their genes. There's nothing you can do about that. Jews has no future anywhere else in the world except the land of Israel. Our ancestors' land, that's what God gave to us. And that, even though that you say to us, those who say to themselves, no, I'm only Jewish by birth, I don't believe in anything. Well, okay, you can say that, but facts speak for themselves. Look at the history. Everything was written in the Torah. It's happening today, in front of our eyes. What our prophet said is happening today, in front of our eyes. How can that be? If there is no God, how could that happen? That is the proof that the Torah is the truth, always has been the truth, and always will be the truth. And therefore, we Jews must stick together, come back to the land of Israel, it's Israel, live together, love one another. אהבת לרעך כמוך, אהבת אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך, בכל נפשך, בכל מאודיך. That is the message I can give to the Jewish people.
Eddie, thank you so much.
Okay.
Eli, it's been such an honor and a privilege to be in your home, to be with you and to hear you relate your story, how being born in Sweden, how your family managed to escape to Sweden and get sanctuary there, and how you saw the future. You're like a Navi, like a prophet, because you could see what was happening many years ago, and unfortunately we see that never again has become now. It's happening now.
Absolutely.
And your message is so profound, and I hope everybody who watches this video will take it to heart, because thank God we've got our own country, and thank God we can only rely on Hashem.
That's all. Only Hashem. If we rely on Hashem and we do everything in our power to work for him and love him, the love, immense love he will give back to us, that will sustain us forever. And
Amazing. Eddie, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Wow.